Good day everybody. So today we will be discussing how to solve for quadratic inequalities. So first and foremost, ano ba tong quadratic inequalities? When you say quadratic inequalities, these are quadratic expressions with an inequality symbols. So we have an example here such as x squared plus 7x plus 10, and then we have an inequality symbol greater than or less than to 0. So what are the inequality symbols that we use? We can use greater than, we can use less than, we can also use greater than or equal, and then less than or equal. For today, what we are going to discuss is how to solve it. Now, let's use this particular example. The x squared plus 7x plus 10 is greater than or equal to 0. If we are going to solve this, the first thing that you have to do is to treat this like an equality. Okay, so we will temporarily make this x squared plus 7x plus 10 is equivalent to 0, so we can get the critical numbers. So that critical numbers will be very useful for our test intervals later, so that we can also identify the test numbers. So later on, we will clarify all those terms that I have just mentioned. So what we are going to do is we're going to, again, we have to solve for the critical numbers. Now, how do we solve the critical numbers? Since this is a quadratic equation, so we have three ways in solving this. This is a complete quadratic equation, so we can solve this using factoring. We can also solve this using quadratic formula, or you can also use completing the square. So it's really up to you what method you'll be using in solving for this quadratic equation. But of course, the easiest among the three that I have just mentioned is by using factoring. So let us now compute for the critical numbers. So we have here, by using factoring, so we have here x and x, then 5 and then 2, then plus and plus. So if we are going to solve that and equate both factors to 0, the answers are x is equivalent to -5 and x is equivalent to -2. So this one, itong mga nakuha natin, these two, these are our critical numbers. Now, these critical numbers, will put that in the number line so we can identify our test numbers naman, which we will be using in our test intervals so we can identify our answer for our quadratic inequality. So ito na nga yung ating mga critical numbers. Now, if we put this in a number line, so number line natin, this will be -5. Syempre, in a number line, kailangan in order. So, -5, then after the -5, diba, it's -2. And then, this is your number line. This is your critical numbers. We will identify the test numbers. The test numbers, ito yon. These are the numbers before the -5, okay, before this part, and then the one in between your critical numbers, which is -5 and -2, and the number after naman the -2. So I'll just put a circle here. So you will be more clear with what I'm trying to say. So these three are our regions. Ito yung mga regions where we're going to get our test numbers. Now, how did you know where the test numbers are supposed to be? It's because we have the critical numbers. Kumbaga, si critical numbers, para siyang naging boundary natin. Okay? Siya yung parang panghati natin for us to get where the test numbers are. So, again, for our test numbers, we have before the -5. There are a lot of numbers before -5, but you are going to get, syempre, the nearest integer in -5. You can get fractions, you can also get decimal, but of course the easiest would be an integer that is nearest -5, which is -6. And then in between -5 and -2, there are again a lot of numbers, infinite numbers in between that two. But what we're going to get is an integer, because that's the easiest. Don't get a fraction or a decimal. You get an integer, and yung pinakamalapit at sa negative 2 para medyo mas madaling i-compute, and that would be negative 3. And ganun din dito sa ating other side. So yung pinaka malapit kay negative 2 naman ang kukunin natin. So we have negative 1. And these green numbers, these are what you call your test numbers. Okay, these test numbers, we will be using that for our test intervals. After choosing our test numbers, pwede na nating isolve yan using our test intervals. Ano ba yung test intervals natin? If you will remember our given kanina, we have x squared plus 7x plus 10 is greater than or equal to 0, and then sinolve natin yan. So, ito na yung test interval natin. We have the x plus 5, then x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. So, this is our test interval. Okay, test interval. This is where we're going to put our test numbers para malaman natin if it's true or false, whether the answer lie on that region or not. Okay, so we can actually, to make it clearer and for you to see the answers clearly, we can actually write it in a table. Pero pag medyo mabilis na, pwede nang wala sa table yan. But for now, let us write it in a table, wherein your table will be divided into different columns. Okay, so first, you have your regions A, and then B, and then C, wherein it consists of your test numbers, which are the negative 6, the negative 3, and the negative 1. So, yan yung region 1, region 2, and region 3 mo. So, ito yon. So, you have the region 1, the one I'm encircling, region 2, and then you also have the region 3. So, that's the 3 different regions. And then, you will use this test interval, this one, yan, that test interval for you to test whether tama or mali ba. Okay? So, let's try it. So, we will just substitute your test number to your test interval. So, that will be negative 6 plus 5. And then, multiply to negative 6 plus 2. Is it greater than or equal to 0? So, you will write the result here if it's true or false later on. So, let's just substitute everything. And then, we have here negative 3 plus 5, same thing. Multiply to negative 3 plus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. And then the other one is negative 1 plus 5 times negative 1 plus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. Again, saan galing yung mga yan? Dito lang po. Ito yung test interval natin. Sinubstitute natin itong ating mga test numbers sa ating test interval. Ito yung kinalabasan. And then, let's find out what the answer is. Actually, you do not need the exact answer. You just need to know whether it's greater than or equal to 0. How would you know? Siyempre, pag greater than 0, the positive. Pag less than 0, the negative. So, that's just what you need to know. Okay? So, you don't need to know the exact answer. We don't actually need the exact answer. So, negative 6 plus 5, that's negative 1. And then, negative 6 plus 2, that's actually negative 4. And when we compute negative times negative, hindi ba positive yon? So, any number that's positive is greater than 0. So, ibig sabihin, that's true. Okay, so yung answer natin dito, which is positive 4, is greater than 0. So that's true. Here also on the next one, the second one, we have negative 3 plus 5, that's positive 2, that's positive. And then negative 3 plus 2, that's negative 1. So negative times positive is negative. So all negative numbers is not greater than 0. So this is false. Diba? So, diba, pag minultiply natin yung 2 and negative 1, it's negative 2. Negative 2 is not greater than 0. So, that's false. And for the last one, we have negative 1 plus 5. That is equivalent to positive 4, positive. And then negative 1 plus 2, that's positive 1. So, positive times positive, that's greater than 0 because all positive numbers are greater than 0. So, that's true. Okay, so, ibig sabihin yung region natin, ganito yung magiging itsura. This is true, this is false, and this is true. Therefore, these are our answer. Remember that your parentheses, these are used for greater than or less than symbol and also for infinities. Ang ginagamit yan sa mga negative at saka sa positive infinity. And for your bracket, we use this for our less than or equal and greater than or equal na mga inequality. Yung bracket natin, doon natin siya ginagamit. So, you just have to remember that. So, ibig sabihin, since this is a negative infinity, so you use parentheses with that. And now, this negative 5 and negative 2, remember, kanina ang ating equation is x squared plus 7x plus 10 is greater than or equal to 0. So, we use greater than or equal to 0. So, ibig sabihin, this will be using your bracket. And because we are combining two answers from two different regions, we are just going to unite your answers there. So, therefore, this is our final answer. So, we have negative infinity, negative 5, unite natin yan, union to negative 2 to positive infinity. This is our final answer for our quadratic inequality. For our next example, we have number 2. We have example number 2. We have here x squared minus 4x minus 5 is less than 0. So, you have the same thing. So, the first thing that you have to do is just treat this like an equality. So, quadratic equation. So, we have x squared minus 4x minus 5 is equivalent to 0. Make sure to use the three methods in solving this. You can use completing the square, factoring, or quadratic formula. And because this naman is factorable, so you just have to factor this out. So, we have here x, and then we have here 5 and 1. This is negative and then positive. And then, pwede na natin siyang ibalik sa less than 0 kasi we're already done getting the critical points or the critical number. The critical number is when you equate this to 0, yung mga roots nito. These are the critical numbers. So, x is equivalent to positive 5 and then we have x is equivalent to negative 1. So, these are our critical numbers. Now, yung critical numbers na yan yung gagamitin po natin. Now, yung mga critical numbers na yan yung mga gagamitin natin para ma-identify natin yung ating mga test numbers. So, let's create again a number line. Actually, if mabilis na kayo, you don't need to do this. But just for discussion purposes, I'm doing this pa, showing it to you where it is in the number line. So, we have here negative 1, syempre in order, and then we have the 5. And then you're going to identify the test numbers. We have three regions. Coming from the three regions, we have the region A, we also have the region B, and we also have the region C. So, let's first identify the test number from region A, which is before the negative 1. Any number before negative 1 na alam nyong madali ninyong masosolve. So, syempre, ano yon? So, we have negative 2. Tapos, in the next region is in between negative 1 and 5. The easiest number to solve, syempre 0. And then, the next one is, after naman the 5, ang daming numbers after that, but the nearest integer to 5 is 6. So, this will be, again, your test numbers. And from those test numbers, you will just substitute that to our test interval, which is this one. Okay, yan yung ating test interval. Again, these are your critical numbers. And then, etong mga numbers na to that we just identified are the test numbers, and this one is our test interval. Ilalagay natin yan sa test intervals. Now, for a change, hindi na natin siya ilalagay sa table para makita nyo yung hindi na maglalagay naman sa table because you have that option, lalo na if you're a little fast na in solving this. So, let's not put it in the table. Let's just compute this. Let's just substitute it here in our test interval. So, negative 2 minus 5. So, we have negative 2 minus 5. That's negative, diba? So, we can just like write negative. We do not need naman the exact answer. Then, we have here negative 2 plus 1. So, it's also negative. So, negative times negative, the answer is positive, right? So, is positive number less than 0? Of course, that's false. So, lagay na natin dyan false. For the 0 naman, so, syempre, pag nilagay mo dito ay 0 minus 5, the answer is negative. Pag 0 plus 1, the answer is positive. Diba? Ang negative times positive is equivalent to negative. Any negative number, again, we do not need naman the exact answer because i-compare lang naman natin siya sa 0 if it's less than 0 or greater than 0, di ba? So, is a negative number less than 0? Any negative number is always going to be less than 0. So, the answer will be true. And for the next one, 6 naman ilalagay natin dito. So, 6 minus 5, that's, di ba, positive 1. So, it's positive. And then 6 plus 1, that's 7, di ba? So, it's positive 7. So, positive times positive is positive. A positive number less than 0 is not true, right? So, that's false. Okay? So, ano nangyari? Hindi natin kailangan yung answer in this region. Hindi natin kailangan ng answer in this region. So, ibig sabihin, our answer is coming from only one region. This one. Ito lang. Okay? So, dulo sa dulo nitong region na to. Dulo sa dulo. Okay? So, what's the end point of this one? It's negative 1. What's the end point of this other one? That's negative 5. And then just separate it by a comma and then put your grouping symbol. It's either a parenthesis. Again, let's just recall. Parenthesis if it's greater than or less than or infinites. Yung mga positive, negative, infinites. Or we have here the brackets if it's greater than or equal and less than or equal. But what are our answers? It's the numbers na. So, ibig sabihin, dito ka nababase. Is this your symbol? This is your less than symbol. So, it means you're going to use a parenthesis. So, you're going to use parenthesis in both sides. Therefore, this is your answer for example number 2. Bigyan ko lang kayo ng ng tip, no? So, kung mapapansin nyo, dun sa example number 1 natin, if I'm going to rewrite the interval, the number line rather, the regions. Remember, our region 1 here is true, and then false, and then true. If that's the pattern of your test intervals, true, false, true, okay, ang magiging answer nyo dito ay 2 answers. Kasi we have 2 regions. First region, second region. Nandito yung unang answer mo, and then the other answer, i-unite mo yan. So, that's parang the format of your answer. That's tip number 1. Whereas, tip number 2, if your test interval is like this, you end up having like this answer, region number 1 or region letter A is false, and then the next region will be true, and then the other region will be false. Now, kung mapapansin mo, ganyan yung region natin. Now, the answer would be yung nandito lang. One region lang, ito lang. So, it's either like this or like this. Okay? So, isa lang yung answer natin. If that's false, true, false. Madalang naman na mangyayari dyan ay true, lahat true, o kaya lahat false, walang ganon. So, usually, the pattern of your test intervals would be true, false, true, at saka false, true, false. Okay? More examples about quadratic inequalities is, for example, letter A. Let's answer some questions here. Letter A, write yes if the given inequality is quadratic inequality and no if it's not. It's very easy to identify lang naman kasi what you need to do is you have to check if it's quadratic. How do you know if it's quadratic? Then it's in the second degree. And how do you know that it's a quadratic inequality? It's aside from being in the second degree, it also has an inequality symbol. So for number 1, if we will check number 1, so we have y plus 1 squared is greater than or equal to 0. So another examples that I will be showing you is here on the right side, you will see sample problems. So like in letter A, write yes if the given inequality is a quadratic inequality and no if it is not. So it's very simple. You just have to identify. How would you know if it's a quadratic inequality? Of course, number 1, kailangan second degree. Okay, it should be in the second degree. And number 2, it should be using an inequality symbol. If it's not using an inequality symbol, then it's not a quadratic inequality. Like in number 1, the given is y plus 1 squared is greater than or equal to 0. I don't have to simplify this anymore because it's very obvious. It's raised to 2 and it has an inequality symbol. So the answer is already yes. Number 2, we have here n plus mn squared is greater than m plus n. This is a no. Why? Because of this. The degree of this is 3. Diba? 1 plus 2 is 3. So this is on the third degree. So definitely it's a no. For the number 3 is 4c squared minus c is greater than or equal to 5. If we're going to make it in standard form, you just have to put this on the other side. So it's 4c squared minus c minus 5 is less than or equal to 0. So it's a yes. It's a quadratic inequality, right? And for the next number, we have the number 4. We have here d minus 4 tapos d plus 1 greater than or equal to 4. So we will be having here d, if you simplify this, minus 4d minus this is negative 4 times 1. So it's negative 4 greater than or equal to 4. So it's obvious. Pag pinagsama naman natin to, that's negative 3d. Then, pag nilipat natin sa kabila to, that's negative 8 is greater than or equal to 0. So, this is not a quadratic inequality. So, the answer here is no. Because again, when you say quadratic inequality, it's in second degree and it has an inequality symbol. For the number 5, so we have here x squared plus 2xy plus y squared is equal to 12. So, because it doesn't use an inequality symbol, so again, this is a no. And for the number 6, we have here x plus 5 squared minus x plus 1 and then less than 6. Actually, if you simplify this, this will be a quadratic equation, quadratic expression. And then, pag inad naman natin ito, magiging quadratic pa rin yan. So, this will be x squared plus 10x plus 25 minus x minus 1 is less than or equal to 6. Even if we simplify this, this will still be a second degree and it has an inequality symbol. So our answer for number 6 is yes. So that's how simple, no? For you to be able to identify if it's a quadratic inequality, it should be in a second degree and it has to have an inequality symbol. For the letter B, you will see here, I won't answer everything because this part is very easy to answer. You just have to transform your quadratic inequalities to standard form, meaning yung other side must be 0. Yun lang siya. So, for example, number 1, you have 2, open parenthesis, x plus 3 squared is less than or equal to 4. So, you just have to simplify this. So, this is 2x squared plus 6x plus 9. Tapos, less than or equal to 4. Then, this will be 2x squared, parang polynomial talaga siya, plus 12x plus 18 is less than or equal to 4. And because we have to make it in standard form, so this should be 0. So, we have here 2x squared plus plus 2x squared plus 12x plus, then lipat sa kabila yon, 14 is less than or equal to 0. So, this is already in the standard form. Again, it's parang multiplying lang ng polynomial and you have to make the other side 0. Another example, the number 2, let's make this in standard form. You have 5 minus 4y plus 3y squared is less than or equal to negative 2y squared. So, just transpose this to the other side. Magiging positive siya. Positive 2y squared. So, that will be 5y squared na. Okay, itong dalawa. And then, minus 4y plus 5 less than or equal to 0. This is already in standard form. That is how you change the following quadratic inequalities in standard form. And another set of example is the letter C. Write true if the given value of the variable satisfies the given quadratic inequality and false if not. Ibig sabihin, you just have to identify kung masasatisfy. Example ay 3x squared plus 4x is less than or equal to 0, masasatisfy daw ba ng x equals to negative 1 itong ating inequality. So, what do you need to do? You just have to substitute. So, that will be 3 negative 1 square plus 4 times negative 1. So, we will just substitute all the x will become negative 1. Tapos, less than or equal to 0. So, that will be 3 negative 1 squared. So, that will be 3. Tapos, minus 4 is less than or equal to 0. This is equivalent to negative 1. Is negative 1 less than or equal to 0? Yes, diba? So, the answer is true. Ganun lang siya. You will just substitute. So, another example, number 2, we have y squared plus 13y is greater than or equal to 8. Masasatisfy ba ni y equals to 4 daw yan? Masasatisfy daw ba niya? Let's see. So, that will be 4 squared plus 13 times 4 is greater than or equal to 8. And then, we have here 4 raised to 2. The answer is 16. And then we have 13, multiply natin by 4, the answer is 52. And then greater than or equal to 8, that will be 16 plus 52, that is equivalent to 68. Kung ang 68 daw ba ay greater than or equal to 8, of course, it is greater than or equal to 8. So the answer is yes. So ibig sabihin, this is again true. So that is how naman you will answer this kinds of question if it satisfies. You just have to substitute. Yung substitute nyo lang yung value dun sa inequality nyo, and then you just have to know whether it satisfies the given inequality. And that's it about quadratic inequality. Thank you for watching.